resources policy and agricultural policy as separate policy documents. He also urged us to be part of the 1 million trees project that they are planning to plant this year within the context of, with the support of EBA as well in that process, and also said we should really look at how this whole effort we are discussing fits in and is part of the ambition and commitment of the government of the Gambia of 400,000 hectares for restoration as part of the AFR 100 initiative. And then on the other side, we had a lot of look at some opportunities that we can also hang on to. We did look at bioenergy, dendropower. We talked about how we could learn from what's happening in Asia, especially in Sri Lanka, where they are using biomass to really power electricity, big time. With the recent project is 70,000 megawatts for one plant that is going to depend solely on biomass. That's 700 times the total electricity capacity of the Gambia at the moment. So it's big, the potential is huge, and we could try to move towards that direction. We talked about economic trees, cashew, and the opportunities to enhance that, kenkeliba, jambakatan teas that are currently growing in the foreign market. We talked about enhancing fodder trees so that our livestock could be improved, because livestock constitute 5% of our GDP at the moment in the Gambia, and that we could use fodder trees to enhance that. And also using fodder trees for food security. And then we talked about, especially Dr. Jaite talked about some upcoming things within EBA, such as the renovation of, forest stations that are happening now, and also to renovate and retrofit 5 MPCs within the Ministry of Department of Community Development, assisted natural regenerations that will be happening through firebed clearing along all the community forests, but also in Kiang West National Park. I think when we discussed, Dr. Jaite, there were almost hundreds of kilometers of fire belts that we have to develop. It's hundreds of kilometers, so it's quite a big job. Purchase of 300 and installation of 300 beehives that the EBA project is going to undertake ambitiously. This year they need to construct 5 water reservoirs and establish green value chains and businesses within community forests. So these are all some huge opportunities that are right in front of us that were discussed yesterday as possibilities of moving forward. Next slide, please. Then we had the 7 groups and some of the discussions yesterday looking at what are those emerging issues that need to be improved if we have to enhance tree cover within the Gambia. And these things were all we tried to capture that as much as possible within the draft Banjul Declaration as we were revising and discussing. Honorable Minister, this is what kept people here until 7 o'clock. And we had to stop it, otherwise they would not have gone. But they really talked about land use planning and land use policy, the need to improve that. They talked a lot about the need for perhaps a national agroforestry policy. They talked about the need to clarify tenure rights for both trees and for land. In fact, this morning that came up again very strongly, because the whole argument was, if we have to plant trees, what about the tenure rights? What about the land rights? Especially in urban areas on roads and all of that. And then they talked about some reward schemes that need to be established for farmers and pastoralists to enable them, plant trees. They talked about water management capacity improvement as needed. In fact, this was a very strong point yesterday on the soil and water improvement at the end. We spent a lot of time discussing that as well. And then they talked about the need for domestic financing to improve from the government side, but also from the private sector side. That was emphasized yesterday as well. But they also called on the donor community, development partners, multilateral partners to help increase finance that could go into tree cover enhancements. There was a lot of discussion yesterday, Honorable Minister, about extension and business support and advisory services that are needed to enable economic and sustainable benefits from trees. That was quite strongly discussed. And then the last part, I think, also was sustained public-private civil society collaboration that is needed to make this happen. So this was just an effort to try and capture some of the things. I hope I did justice to that. And with that, I'll rest on behalf of the group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Minan. I have introduced at least all others before the minister, before the high table really settled in, and of course you have seen someone else attached, participating. Right on my immediate left is the person who is really the gatekeeper of all GCF projects in this country. He's a very modest guy who does not show up most of the time and doesn't even say much when he shows up. But indeed, he is, Baimadi Sise. He is the Director of the Budget. Director of Budgets at the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs. The way these projects are organized, that is GCF-funded projects, is that once it is prepared by the various agencies and partners, it is submitted through him, the gatekeeper, for him to submit to GCF, which are now based in South Korea. And any communications that is also coming to the individual countries, come through him. So certainly he is always there to support us, and in fact much of our activities and communications we really have to make sure he gets involved, and it's also important for him to know what we are doing all the time. So essentially that is it. I hope he has anything to add onto it now. If not, we hope he would participate in the upcoming discussions. Yeah. Please. Yes.
Honorable Minister, my fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, good morning, everybody. My name is Bayamadi Sise. I'm the Director of Budget. I'm also the NDA, which is the National Designated Authority to the Green Climate Fund. Let me just quickly elaborate on what Dr. just said about my role as the NDA to the GCF, to the Green Climate Fund. Basically, the Green Climate Fund today is the biggest multilateral climate fund in the world. Their role is basically to see how best they can finance climate change-related projects, either in the area of mitigation, which is basically trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, or in the area of adaptation, which is basically trying to increase resiliency of those who are most vulnerable to climate change. My role normally comprises of four main things, my role. Number one is about sensitization. I sensitize the people about the GCF. How do you go about submitting a project to the GCF? How do you get accredited with the GCF? And I mainly do this via various media channels. For example, the TV, I go to the radio. I also have interviews with local print media as well. We also conduct workshops as well to invite the media, private sector, NGOs, civil societies, and the like, basically to sensitize them about the GCF. My second role is to issue what we call a no objection letter for any project that you want to submit to the GCF. So if you're interested in any project, you have to submit it to us. And we have a local team called the GCF Technical Working Group Committee. And this comprises of various stakeholders, including representatives from the Agriculture Ministry, Environment Ministry, Department of Water Resources, Department of Forestry, Parks and Wildlife, Energy, National Environment Agency, Health. All these key stakeholders will take a look at the project, and we Each one of us will come up with comments. Then we'll give you our feedback. Once you incorporate those comments, then we can issue what we call the no objection letter, so you can submit the project to the GCF. The third thing I do is I also recommend institutions to be accredited with the GCF. Currently in the Gambia, we only have 2 institutions that are accredited with the GCF. That is the FAO and also the UNDP. Now, our target is to see how we can get national entities, Gambian entities, to also be accredited with the GCF. What does accreditation mean? It basically means that for any project, if you're the accredited entity, all the funds are disbursed to you directly. The funds do not go to the government. So you manage the funds, basically. And in addition to that, also, you get paid what we call a management fee, of equivalent to 8.5% of the total cost of the project. So we want to see Gambian entities be accredited. So far, we've nominated the GAMWorks to be accredited. We've also nominated the GCCI, and we also nominated Guaranteed Trust Bank also to be accredited with the GCF. And the fourth thing I do is I also serve as I look at the broad strategic overview of all GCF activities in this country. So these are my 4 roles with the GCF. Now, specifically, what have we done so far with the GCF as a government? As you all know, this project, this EBA project, is the first project that is financed by the GCF. It's about $23 million, and everything is grant. And I'm sure you guys must have heard yesterday the objective of this project, so I'll not dwell more on the objective of this EBA project. The other project we're currently working on is to do with how to enhance the resiliency of the fishing sector. Basically, this project, we want to work with the FAO to submit this project. It's looking at a few things. It's looking at how to enhance the resiliency of the landing sites of this of the fishing industry. The construction of rams, construction of storage facility, cold storage facilities that are solar powered. Also looking at the construction of aquaculture, coming up with new fishing techniques. Smoking techniques as well. This project we recently submitted to the GCF, and they've given us their feedback. Now we're incorporating those feedbacks, but we've also applied what we call for PPF, Project Preparatory Facility, of $2 million, and this has been approved by the GCF. So what we want to do now is conduct feasibility study to basically enhance the formulation of this particular project. Another project that we're working on is also with the UNDP. This is actually dealing with the issue of coastal erosion, especially around the Kololi area, because we see that the beach is getting very, very close to the hotels. And tourism plays a significant role in our economy. It contributes about 15% towards GDP. So we're a bit worried that the beach is getting very, very close. This project is specifically looking at beach revetment programs. It's also looking at the construction of breakwaters and also coastal infrastructure, having it in place within the Kololi area. This project is submitted. They've also given us their feedback, and we're now trying to incorporate those feedbacks into the project. The other projects we're working on, they are called readiness projects. One of them has already been submitted. It's called the RED Plus project, which is basically how do you reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions from deforestation activities. This has already been submitted, and we're waiting for the GCF on their feedback. We're also working what we call a NAP, National Adaptation Plan, with the GCF. This is also a $3 million project. I just received the first draft 2 days ago, so we're currently reviewing the first draft. And our intention is to submit this project within the next 2 or 3 weeks, this NAP. Another readiness project that we're working on also is called basically trying to come up with a minimum energy performance standards for all air conditioners and refrigerators coming into the country. We want to make sure that at least we have a minimum energy efficient ACs and fridges coming into the country. This one is also being worked with UNEP, and we already have a first draft. Hopefully in the next month or so, we'll be submitting this readiness project as well to the GCF. And the last readiness that we're working on is basically with the ADB. This readiness has 3 components. The first component is trying to set up what we call a climate change fund in the Gambia, a national climate change fund in the Gambia. That's the first component. The second component is how best do we engage the private sector to build their capacity on climate change, but also submit projects to the GCF. Because so far, all the projects that has been submitted to the GCF are mainly government-driven. We want to see also now projects from the NGOs, from the civil societies, but most importantly also from the private sector. So we want to build their capacity so that they can at least submit projects to the GCF as well. And the third component is about accreditation support. How do we see how best to support institutions like GAMWorks and GCCI to be accredited with the GCF? And I forgot one final project, which we are submitting as a regional project. This was between Gambia, Niger, Senegal, Nigeria, Ghana. It's basically looking at the issue of crop insurance. Because as you all know, in 2010, when we had a drought, it was a big crop failure in this country. Likewise, in 2014, when we had the late rainfall, there was a big crop failure as well too. So what we want to do now, we want to come up with an insurance scheme, whereby in the event we have a crop failure, we can count on that insurance scheme. This is an $80 million project, but again, it's a regional project that will be jointly submitted by 5 countries. So far, this is what we have, and if you're interested in submitting any projects to the GCF, please feel free to come to us at the Ministry of Finance. We have a whole secretariat working only on GCF-related issues. So with that, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. A lot of things happening. Some of it, is hard. Even for those, of course, who don't or who wonder what GCF is, if you are not here early on. I mean, this Green Climate Fund is really the product of the Paris Agreement on climate change. When it was been debated for the last many years as to what the causes of climate change and being driven by human beings, the question of who is responsible came up several times, and eventually it was all agreed that really the developed countries, through their many years of industrialization, really contributed the most. But at the same time, the least developed countries like ours, who are not even started that journey of development and industrialization, would eventually borne the brunt force of the impacts. So yes, we did not start the problem, or we did not cause it, but we would end up really absorbing the impact. Then it was said, okay, then how do you, that is, we decided demanding how much, or how do we compensate these developed countries, or how do we help them really become more resilient? So mitigation first, then adaptation, so they say, okay, let the industrialized countries cough out the money. The money is put in a fund, GCF. So now it is up to the least developed countries and the developing countries and all those who really want to build their resilience against these climate change impacts to bring up ideas and see how best we can. Of course, it is climate related. A lot of the things will be land-based or some infrastructure, but anything that is really going to deal with the impacts of climate change. In this country, we have few things that are very easy to identify as climate change impacts. Land degradation is very big. And coastal erosion, coastal inundation, that is sea level rise, is going to be one of the drivers. And of course, salinity intrusion. All of these are part of that same basket, as well as, temperatures are going to change. The impact on ecosystems and livelihoods, in fact, on human beings too. So either human health or human. So all of these really related to things that we believe are the direct impacts of climate change. Our ways of mitigating or adapting to them is what really drives all these projects. So it's not going to be easy to say, well, we want to innovate a new airplane that will reduce less. GCF would say, well, that's not ours. Or we want to do something really out of the realm. GCF will say no. So it is usually very difficult to really come up, but for us in the Gambia, it's very easy because land-based issues are predominant, land degradation, sea level rise, coastal erosion, all sorts of things that are directly related to climate change are really, because Gambia suddenly, we are among the top 10 countries that will be most impacted by climate change. So anyway, that's just a brief, and I think our next presentation will be really the statement. So I don't know whether Lalisa would be the one, leading that. So I guess Kennedy, is Kennedy showing it up while you talk, or? we wait for more copies and Kennedy projecting, this is what we call Banjul tree cover resolution. It is essentially what has really come out of yesterday's discussion in terms of what can we do, where we are regarding tree cover and what can we do to really help bring back the tree cover in all places but on farmlands in particular. So once we project, I think we would go section by section, and then Lalisa would lead the discussion, and later on we would invite the Honorable Minister and the representatives to speak.
Okay, I think we can proceed. For those of you who were in the room yesterday, we had quite a long discussion on the statements within the resolution that we have deliberated on very well. In fact, as Peter said, we kept you here up to 7 p.m. Not really as kept you, but because it is interesting and you believe in it, that's why we all stayed here. So if I can start from the top, because we received some recommendations from the group. The original statement title, which read the Banjul resolution on increasing tree cover for the Gambia, the comment we received quite widely is that it is too long. So what was suggested is the Banjul tree cover resolution, yeah? And we agreed to that, and now the new title of this document reads the Banjul tree cover resolution. Inside the body, all the comments that you guys have raised are all accepted. Even in some places, we have added new sub-articles or sub-statements so that it is all addressed, it is all captured, because this is our document. It is not only the EBA project or ICRAF or so, it is ours. This is our statement. This is what we said should actually be taken up as an important statement. So I don't know how it is easier to go through each of them, or we should just discuss section by section. Because the team here, we have gone through it. Yeah? Oh, yeah. Maybe I can read them, yeah? So I'm given the privilege to read it the way it is. You can also follow it on the screen if you did not get the printed version. The Banjul Tree Cover Resolution, building a healthy, resilient, and prosperous, sustainable economy in the Gambia through trees. Banjul, 21st of February, 2020. Preamble. We, the people of the Gambia, drawn from different sectors, groups, and institutions, held a two-day consultative meeting on 20th and 21st of February 2020 in Banjul to discuss on boosting tree cover for a healthy, resilient, and prosperous natural resource-based economy in the Gambia, and resolve it as follows. We note the high dependence of our people on different species of trees for their livelihood. We appreciate the fundamental role that trees play in promoting social, economic, and environmental sustainability in the Gambia. We recognize and acknowledge that there is a great opportunity to improve on the planning processes of tree growing to make it more effective in restoring the functionality of ecosystems. We recognize the essential role that individuals, households, public and private sector institutions could play in the process of national development through sustainable tree and forest management. We recognize the significant decline in tree cover in our country over the years. We therefore seek to pass a resolution to boost tree cover in our landscapes for a healthy, resilient, and prosperous natural resource-based economy. We call upon the general public to refer to this document as the Banjul Tree Cover Resolution. If there is any comment on that section, then we can discuss. Yes. Kennedy, can you give him the mic?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Professor Sidat Yafa, University of the Gambia, Dean School of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences. There's only a few typos.
Okay.
If you look at from the beginning, the Banjul Tree Cover Resolution is okay, but the next line says, building a healthy, resilient, prosperous, and sustainable.
Okay.
You forgot to put sustainable. Now, when we're done, in order to save time, then I can bring, because I'm writing comments on it.
Yes.
We can do that.
That's great.
Yeah,
Thanks.
some other small typos, we'll fix those. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. Okay, let me go to the next section. Actionable resolutions. We seek to achieve the goal of increasing tree cover through the following approach. Number one, promote tree growing at individual, household, and community levels. 1.1. We encourage individuals, family, household, and community members to own the process of planting and growing trees to restore their farmlands, generate income for their families, and to reduce conflict with neighbors. 1, 2, we call upon the national and local governments and other parties engaged in tree growing to devise a special support mechanism for women, youth, and other marginalized groups within the society. Article 2, encourage public institutions and civil society organizations to plant and grow trees. 2.1, we call upon public entities to plant and nurture trees within the land areas under their jurisdiction or any available public land for tree growing. 2.2, we urge universities and schools to include agroforestry into the educational curriculum. 2.3, we urge civil society organizations to engage actively and sustainably in tree growing schemes. Article 3, advocate for greener and healthier neighborhoods by growing trees. 3.1, we urge households, communities, and local councils in urban areas to grow different species of trees within their plots and other available spaces. 3.2, we call upon cities and urban councils to take responsibility of greening urban areas, including soil and water conservation measures. Article 4, promote green businesses. 4.1, we call upon the private sector to aid technically and financially support farmers and committed tree growers to intensify growing trees in their farms and other public areas. The last section, enabling tree growing. Article 5, creating enabling policy, institutions, and incentives. 5.1, we call upon the national government to produce an agroforestry policy for the Gambia that lays out an ambition and implementation mechanisms ranging from practices, strategies, institutional arrangements, and incentives for the tree growers. 5.2, we encourage institutionalizing tree ownership and rights to goods and services resulting from trees grown as a principal incentive for tree growing. 5.3, we urge the national government and local authorities and sectors to develop monitoring and accounting frameworks for enabling collective and individual responsibility for managing trees and landscapes. 5.4, we call upon the national and local governments and the private sector to develop processing, value addition, and marketing infrastructure for tree products produced by communities, while also creating market linkage and value addition schemes. 5.5, we call upon the national and local governments to prioritize high-value, locally adaptable tree species for wider planting and subsequently growing. 5.6, we call upon the institutions assigned by the national government to develop implementation, monitoring, and evaluation strategies that can address the needs at subnational and other local jurisdictions. 5.7, we call upon the government to provide adequate and reliable funding for tree growing. The last one, 5.8, we call upon the national and local governments to put in place communication and advocacy strategies to promote tree growing. If there are comments, suggestions, also up here from the panel, I think this is most welcome. Yes, there is. Yes.
Thank you very much. And excuse me for my ignorance in case I have no better understanding than you have. for my absence yesterday. However, I have an issue to bring up. It says somewhere to minimize conflicts, the enabling tree growing. I think there it says to minimize conflicts between
It's Article 1.1. I can read it again.
no, excuse me. Yeah, this is the actionable resolution, sorry.
Yes. 1.1.
Yes,
I'm
1.1.
seeing the word. It's on the screen.
Yes, 1.1, please.
Yes.
There it says at the very tail end, it's like minimizing conflicts or to reduce conflict with neighbors.
Yes.
I would suggest we just say to minimize conflicts. My point here,
Okay.
the conflict may not necessarily be between the neighbors. It could be between the individual and the community itself. If I look at the promote tree growing at individual, household, and community level.
Okay.
That being the case, just remove between neighbors and just leave it at to reduce conflict. Because the conflict could be between me and the community.
Yeah. Okay. Very good point. So, do we all
No,
agree
I'm not
with this
specific.
one? Because we need to solve. Do we agree with the suggestion made?
Show of hands.
Okay. Dr. Taito?
Yes.
Okay.
Suma, you have a comment to make?
Okay.
I will suggest we maintain or use a qualifier to at least make sense at the end of the, because like his point, I agree when he said within, let's say, neighbors. Well, I will suggest we say, let's say, to at least prevent conflict in communities. Because that, for me personally, that would be like, because when you only stop at conflict, somebody, can further ask conflict within where? Okay. Or within the community. This could be a family conflict. This could be maybe a societal problem or so. Because we all understand land tenure system, emanated from household, family and community level. So when we say community, this encompasses a whole lot of things. That's my suggestion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So, because we want to capture it, you're suggesting we say to reduce conflict within communities. Within. Okay. Yeah. We are taking note of.
Say within parties.
Okay. Okay. Kennedy,
We take note, please.
can you give to Professor? Yes, yes. Sorry? Within communities. Okay. Let's show hands if we agree that we call it to reduce conflict within.
Hello?
Sorry.
Please.
Let's have a view from the panel, please.
I am equally suggesting we maintain neighbors, because even within our communities, we are neighbors. And I want to just give an example. My great-grandfather had a farm years ago, since before I was born. And today, neither him nor my grandfather or even my father is alive. But we were able to claim that farm without any conflict with the one we share a border with, who is our neighbor in the community, because of the trees that he maintained. And in fact, some of the trees were named after him, like this Duto, which is called Dimba, is named after him and is called Dimba Babu Jami. And because of that, we were able to maintain the boundary and establish ownership without any issue. So that prevented conflict between us and our neighbor in the community. So that, I don't think the word neighbor here can create any problem. It depends on the way we contextualize it anyway.
All right, I think we get that part, and if there is any other comment, it would be nice.
Okay.
Okay, my comment is related to action 1.1.1, which talks about conflict, and the other issue is related to the enabling free growing.
Okay, first on the conflict, please.
The 5.2, and that enabling issues related to institutionalizing free ownership rights. I would also suggest that we have another sub-heading which supports those tenure holders in case their rights are offended. Because yes, we can create institutional framework to guarantee tenure, but how about when those tenure rights are offended? So I think we need another statement there which will urge government and local authorities to support those tenure holders in case their rights are offended. Thank you.
Okay. Maybe from the panel, if there are viewpoints on this one.
I mean, the only thing I have is that once your right is acknowledged and is established, any infringement of that is an infringement. So, or encroachment upon it is an encroachment. So it's about really defending those rights on your side. So government cannot just go and defend it for you. You just have to find a good way of defending the rights that have been encroached upon. Of course, it's the semantics. I mean, that's why laws are created. We do have property rights here, and we do have laws about property rights. It's just that most of the time they are not enforced. Yeah.
So does that answer the suggestion you have? Yes, let somebody add from the panel here. Peter, on the specific issue that he's raising. Can you put on the mic?
I think the word guarantee, if interpreted broadly, can mean allow you to get it, but also allow that if it's violated, you guarantee that it will be defended, right? If you interpret guarantee more broadly. So putting defense sort of, I think, extends it a bit. But once you guarantee, you're saying from the point of you accessing those rights and maintaining those rights should be taken into account by those institutions. So I think guarantee is more, yeah.
So in that context, how do we rephrase it, Peter? Any suggestion on the rephrasing?
Well, I would suggest Peter to think about a rephrasing because we do have time issues here.
Yes.
So we can handle that. If there is any other that really needs to be added, it would be a good thing to hear now, please.
Yes. 5.6, okay. Any viewpoint from the panel, please? Maybe Honorable Minister, if you have some insights on that one. 5.6, the one which talks about, yeah, we call upon the institutions assigned by the national government to develop implementation, monitoring, and evaluation strategies that can address the needs at subnational and other local jurisdictions. His comment is basically saying we left everything to the government and too much of the burden is on the government. Where are other agencies? Where are the people?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I think here we have to look at the context that we are saying this. Now, if we have government institutions, I could not agree more with Mr. Danso that that is no more the narrative. We have to change the narrative for the civil society and communities at large to be able to know for themselves whether these things are working or they are not working. Let me just give you a typical example. At the beginning of the rainy season last year, I was approached by a councillor from Banjul to be given 80 seedlings to be tested in Tobacco Road. Now, the responsibility of the Department of Forestry, I have directed the Department of Forestry, just to buttress your point, for them to give them 80 seedlings with 3 guards. Now, the councillor went and she devised herself a methodology as to who should get it with conditions. She set her own conditions. If you want to get this, you must dig a hole up to this depth, and you must be able to water this on daily basis, and make sure that no animal comes near it, and you make sure that the tree grows. So he gave it to Dr. Jete, for instance. The neighbor shows that Dr. Jete has a tree at his compound gate. And then he comes to the councillor. How can you give it to Dr. Jete without? Would you agree what Dr. Jete has agreed to? And then this is the way she was able to distribute all this. And one night I was in Tobacco Road myself, and I just asked my driver to stop, and I was checking on some of those trees, and I've seen that they are well taken care of. So I think what Danso is saying, I agree. We could expand this to empower the communities themselves to also come up with their own mechanism of monitoring, to see that what we have in our communities, whether they are working or they are not working. And if they are not working, how can we make them work? I think that is the context that I'm talking about. But when you say government assigned, national government assigned institutions, that already, exclude others. So this is just to buttress your point. I believe we can expand this to cover civil society, community-based, and other communities, even individuals. Because we have individuals that are producing seedlings and they are taking care of so many trees at their own level. And when the National Assembly member for Banjul North, Mr. Honorable Silla, has seen this, he also approached me. And out of my own nursery of 100 seedlings, I gave him 60 seedlings out of my own, not from the Department of Forestry. I gave him 60 seedlings to adopt the same approach, so that the entire Banjul North could be covered with trees. So far we have given them 80 plus 60, that is 140. So if that works in Banjul, why not in other parts of Serekunda? So that is a pilot that I am already monitoring myself. So if this works in Banjul North, and the last time the member for Banjul South was, yes, because you went to Gambia High School and you are also a Banjul North person. So that is why I said, no, we just want to pilot this and see if it works. The greening of capital cities that we are talking about and reviving of urban forestry in this country, then we could start those discussions and see how we move forward.
Good. Yeah, Dr. Zaite. Any other point, any additional comment? Because this one.
Okay, under actionable resolution 1.1.
Yes.
I think it is generally observed that livestock, they destroy a lot of trees. And I think we can add like the feed for livestock, like the growing of tree. Okay. There you have growing trees to restore their farmland, generate income. I think we can add to feed livestock.
Okay.
That is which section again?
1.1.
1.1.
Okay.
1.1.
That's well taken note of.
Taken off. Okay.
Okay. So
this is Friday, and there is no doubt, our guest of honor needs to be somewhere else in 30 minutes with most people. So, okay. So what I will suggest we do now is we agree that we will take it upon ourselves as the organizers to make sure we polish this and present it to the various ministries for final adoption, that is through the minister's office. I believe our ministry will be able to then reach out to all, and then we come up with the necessary signatures. And of course, this is the beginning of a long conversation. We will try and define ways or devise ways to go to the next level, which could be at sub-national level. With the help of governors, we should be able to then meet more people and reach more people, so that we can come up with a final language that really will be seen as, a banjo resolution for tree cover, and definitely this is what we do. What I would then suggest we do now in the next coming few minutes is to see whether any one of our guests here would like to comment, beginning with the governor on the other side, and just to say a few words. And then from there we can give it to the Deputy Permanent Secretary also.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, Doctor. Good afternoon, Honorable Minister, our distinguished guests from Nairobi, colleagues, brothers and sisters in the struggle to restore our forest cover, the media. Our Honorable Minister is actually in the due time, and as a matter of fact, today is Friday. We actually are almost out of time. But again, we understand, all of us, through this meeting, that the restoration of forests is a very necessary action to be taken by all and sundry. Taking into cognizance that the dependency on the forest too is innate in our rural communities due to various factors: poverty, need to rear our livestock, and other livelihood depends highly on our forests. Therefore, the strategy that we need to put in place have to be so cognizant with the growth and development of the 21st century. Notwithstanding, Honorable Minister, I think the harmonization of our policy that will be very important between agriculture and environment is very, very unique. And also, I wish to add that we need to also support, in order to maintain the forest cover, we need to support the forestry agency and departments and institutions from the local level by helping them with equipments that can help restore our forests in terms of bathing, water, supply, etc., etc. Particularly, to maintain the livelihood of our livestock, we need to put up reservoirs for them. And all this would need equipments. To avoid paying contract and contract fees all the time, provide equipments that will be sustaining and then more enhancing than trying to contract people and institutions and individuals to come in all the time to do this belting and so on. Our forest cover can be maintained by constant belting, protection, and extinguishing of fire and the effects on the forest. notwithstanding, my region and other regions, I'm sure, are going to highly depend and partner with both institutions, agriculture and environment, and with the Directorate of Budget at the Ministry of Finance under this Green Climate Fund to see how much can we be able to support our people, our region, in terms of sustaining the environment and the forest cover. I thank you so much for the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Honorable Minister of Environment, members of the High Table, and the general members of the participating group. Good afternoon to you all. Protecting our environment and to be resilient as far as climate change is concerned cannot be overemphasized as far as my ministry is concerned. Our relationship with forestry, I think, is more connected than any other ministry because trees are lives as far as my ministry is concerned. Without trees, no rainfall. We've all seen how erratic rainfall is in this country, which necessitated the planting of trees. And if groups have failed in resuscitating the forest cover of this country, I think it is high time we look at individuals. And most of the plans that we have seen in the presentations are geared towards encouraging individuals to plant trees. By that, we can have enough rainfall to be able to grow more food, to be self-sufficient in food, then to be able to talk about other development issues. Because if we are not food self-sufficient, we cannot move forward. We all know how much money our government is spending on the importation of food, all because we are not self-sufficient in any way. Trees contribute a lot in giving us sufficient rainfall for us to be able to grow more food to the extent of exporting the excess. So planting trees, the importance cannot be overemphasized, which made this particular convergence one of the most important convergences I have ever attended. Collaboration, as ministries have been said here, institutional collaboration is very key, because no one institution can take this country where we are yearning it to be. We have to align our efforts, and that brought about the relationship between forestry and agriculture. We need to collaborate, align our efforts to make sure we are able to achieve our common objectives. I thank you all for your kind attention.
Thank you. I have been very, very moved by the discussions. As I said yesterday, I was very pleased that nobody wanted to leave the room. Everybody wanted to stay and to keep engaged. I'm very pleased this morning, Honorable Minister, that you gave an example wherein you gave your own seedling, to someone to help move this process forward. What I would say is I think that we all need to be that engaged personally, because if we are not engaged in action, I don't think that we will go anywhere. So let's move this beyond what we've been talking about into action in our own little ways. So I just wanted to say Jarama, Abaraka, Jerejenjef.
Thank you. All right, bye. Please.
Just quickly, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Maybe instead of talking about the GCF, I'll just add my voice on the issue of deforestation. I think I would also like to point out the issue of deforestation from a mitigation perspective, that it's important for us to really grow forests in the sense that they also act as carbon sinks, whereby they're also absorbing the CO2 already emitted into the atmosphere. In addition to that also, once these forests are cut, they also emit a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. So it's important to also bear in mind these two mitigation impacts of really cutting down forests. And also just to quickly highlight, there was a study that was recently done by the IPCC, and they made a very critical point. They say you can save more than 33% of greenhouse gas emissions on an annual basis if you just do two things. One is completely stop deforestation, stop cutting down trees, and two, allow the cut down forest to regrow. If you just do these two things alone, you can save up to 33%.
Minister, I would like to thank every single one who has participated in this over the last 2 days. We recognize the difficulties in leaving your offices, your busy times, and coming over. Right, now that the power is back, I would like us to do one thing before the minister starts his remarks, and that is with a show of hands, really, to see whether we endorse with we endorse this statement with minor corrections or not. So let me see by a show of hands those who endorse the statement. Okay, if it's unanimous, then we all say aye. All right, then, Honorable Minister, please, you have the floor to conclude the remarks. Yes, we can.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jete. Deputy Permanent Secretary, Minister of Agriculture, the Director of Budget, and also the NDA for GCM, Governor CRR, Dr. Peter Mina, and Lalia, and the media, other civil society representatives. It is my honor to preside over the closing ceremony of this National Policy Discourse on minimum tree cover on farms in the Gambia, with the theme, boosting resilience and prosperity through trees, enhancing farm tree cover in rural Gambia. But Dr. Jete, I would just want to assure you that with the vision of the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Natural Resources, we are not only looking at the rural Gambia, but we are also in the process, as you are aware, of bringing back the urban forestry, where we have open spaces in the urban areas that need to be planted with trees so that they can also give us the environmental goods and services, and also, as Baimadi has highlighted, that they can also serve as carbon sinks to help us to regulate our microclimate within our urban areas. We all know that our urban areas are highly densely populated, but without trees as well, we'll have a lot of CO2 concentration that will also lead to global warming, and we have warm environment all over our area. So it is important that, Doctor, we also look at the urban areas. As we are aware, the Gambia is one of the most vulnerable countries to the negative impacts of climate change. And this is due to a combination of factors. As a country, we are located in a Western Sahel low-lying topography along the banks of the River Gambia, and a high population density that is heavily dependent on subsistence agriculture that makes it especially vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Baimadi has just spoke about a few of the lined up projects that are in the process, that are being processed at the GCF level. And one of the projects that he spoke about, that is the sea level rise protection of economic and social assets of the Gambia. Because we all know, with sea level rise, our highway from Banjul is threatened. Banjul city itself is threatened, where we have major national infrastructure. And with this, we're going to lose our investments over the years. And this is why this project, as a follow-up to the Coastal Resilience Project that has just ended in 2018, for us to have a follow-up project to support. By Madi, for your information, I have met with the UNDP team in my office when I have just presided over and endorsed this project. But I've also included for them to widen the geographic coverage of this project, not only in the urban Kololi area to protect the hotels, but we also have cultural centers like the Fort Bullock, which is seriously threatened. We have the James Island, which is also seriously threatened. We have other rural areas that are of historical importance to the Gambia that also need protection. So, in fact, I've been speaking to one of the consultants to go and do a drone map of all these areas to see what method do we adopt to ensure that these areas are protected from sea level rise and government losing investment. We all know that our climate over the years have been characterized by decrease in the total amount of rainfall, shortening of length of rainy season, and increase in frequency of intensity of dry spells. And this year is a typical example. At the beginning of rains this year, we have 25 days dry spell. 25 days. And this has impacted the preliminary studies conducted by the Ministry of Agriculture has indicated that over 350,000 farmers have poor harvest. The pre-harvest studies indicated that 350,000 farmers are affected. As a government, a responsible and responsive government, how do we support those farmers? And I think this is where the insurance you are talking about plays a critical role in supporting government's effort to support those kind of farmers who fall in this category. And I can assure you, we are also, together with the Ministry of Finance, together and the Ministry of Agriculture, we are working hard with our partners, particularly the Africa Risk Capacity, to ensure that support is given to these farmers. But of course, we have, at the NDMA, we are working with them to see that we get support to support these farmers. But to avoid all this, we must build the capacity and the resilience of our vulnerable communities so that they can have a soft landing when these kind of things happen. So this is important for us to build the capacity and resilience of our population. And this is why the Ministry of Environment, with the support of the European Union, we have developed the climate change policy. And at the core of this policy is to support resilience and mainstream climate change in all facets of our economy. And this is important, and this is where Baimadi also talked about the local climate fund. This is part of the implementation strategy of the climate policy, that we're going to set up a local climate fund that will support the government, the private sector, and the civil society to implement some of their mitigation and adaptation activities that the donor community can support. We have also working on combating this. We also see, as highlighted by the Deputy Permanent Secretary, we also need to synergize our efforts and also harmonize our policies. And in that direction, yesterday I talked about harmonization of, amalgamating the policy of natural resource and the agriculture policy so that we can have an ANR, agriculture and natural resource policy, that will look into the wider network of agriculture and natural resource in all locations of this country to avoid conflicts, herdsmen and Badibunkas growing their groundnut, having conflict with the herdsmen. All these are issues that the policy has highlighted so that we can be able to have a community living in harmony with itself and be able to concentrate on development efforts to develop themselves. As highlighted, this project is being implemented in partnership with ICRA, the UNEP, and the government of the Gambia through the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change, and Natural Resources. What this project seeks to achieve is to restore 7,000 hectares of degraded forest land, but as well restore 3,000 hectares of degraded agricultural land. But most importantly, this project seeks to establish natural resource entrepreneurs in intervening communities, so that many people thought that when you say forest, it's only about wood. It's not only about wood. There are other products called non-wood products that can be used and enhance their value to support the rural economy that can spur national economic growth and development. And this EBA has already conducted market studies, and the market studies has revealed a lot about this product that we are about to promote, and communities must be ready to show leadership and also ensure that this project is completely different from other projects that we have seen. What we want to achieve in this project is long-term sustainability. When the project goes out, when EBA project phased out, we want to see that communities themselves are able to do the work that they were doing, because their capacities will be built in the process, and also ensure that the communities themselves participate effectively in ensuring that that long-term sustainability is achieved. And I think the project, 250 natural resource-based enterprises across 120 communities in URR, in CRR, and LRR. You know why we did not include NBR? Because the filibunkers have cleared all our land. So, I am making a declaration here that when the 1 million tree campaign starts, we want all the filibunkers to cross and go to Badibu and plant all the trees that they have cut. This is as a way of making restoration process economically viable, and policy support, institutional strengthening, and knowledge generation to support large-scale implementation of EBA in the Gambia. Over the past years, EBA project invested millions of dollars to create the necessary tree nursery infrastructure to raise the millions of tree seedlings that will be needed for the restoration. In the coming year, EBA plans to support the development of beekeeping in 30 communities, rehabilitate and retrofit multi-purpose centers with food processing, packaging, and handicraft equipment, and construct community-based ecotourism facilities. Now, to give you the medium-term plan of this government is to promote ecotourism and use our natural heritage to promote tourism, but also decentralized tourism. We want to rehabilitate these ecotourism centers to diversify the tourism product. Already, it has been highlighted that erosion is fast taking over. And the beach that we have been promoting for the past 50 years, we also need to diversify to ensure that we attract high-value tourists, not only in the urban area, but also at the rural areas where we can create employment and also local economic development. Ladies and gentlemen, today's gathering is to deliberate on the many benefits of trees to poverty reduction, improving livelihood and climate resilience, and the policies and strategies needed to be in place to bring back trees into the agricultural landscape, acknowledging the biophysical, climate, and sociocultural variabilities in the country. This is a fact. This is why I said everything that we do must be evidence-based, must be research-based, so that we have the cultural tolerance and cultural acceptability of some of the things that we are coming up. Now, with regards to alternatives, because we did not talk about the charcoal burning in this country. I believe one of the factors affecting forest cover in this country is charcoal burning and bushfire. We must develop, through research and innovation, alternatives to charcoal production using the forest resources. But one thing very important that we as Gambians need to understand, we must learn to adapt. Because we all remember when the groundnut briquette was developed here, a lot of people say, no. Circumstances have changed. When we were young, I can go and fetch firewood and my mother would cook within an hour. But today, if you want to go and fetch firewood in Salikanye, you have to spend 4 hours, 5 hours before you come back with something good. Because population pressure is putting a lot of pressure, and people are dependent on the natural environment for their existence. So we must factor this in all what we are doing to ensure that we have policies that are already in place. But how do we change the behavior of the people? How do we change the attitude of the people? This is the big question mark, that the challenge that we all have at the Ministry of Environment, Agriculture, all of us, we must be able to adapt. That is why we are saying adaptation. We must be able to adapt. We must be able to adapt to the changing circumstances so that we can all have a better living in this country. So I implore on all of you to work diligently and find common ground where agriculture can continue to meet our food needs while trees continue to provide the ameliorating microclimate benefits, soil fertility, as well as financial reform. This is very important. The linkages are very clear, and we cannot dispute that. All what we need is to synergize and work together as team, and the role and responsibility of the civil society is very important. Advocacy is so important in this process so that people can change their behavior towards the environment. The private sector, we also need a paradigm shift. We were talking about producing adequate food for our people. But how do we do this? We must be able to revolutionize the agriculture sector. And we cannot do that with dependence on rain-fed agriculture. So we must have innovation. The capacity of River Gambia to irrigate, Dr. Jete will tell you, is not much. Because if we continue to irrigate with the fresh water, what will happen, the saline front will intrude, and we will have more salt water. So what other innovations is there for our engineers, agricultural engineers, to work on to ensure that we continue producing food, but also ensuring that environment maintains its integrity and sustainability. This is very important. So agriculture and forestry, agriculture and environment, Ministry of Health, we all have a stake in this. All the other ministries are relevant, and all the major drivers of climate change, we must all work together. The Ministry of Land, I have just seen here, you talked about land policy, land use planning. This is very important guide to guide us not to encroach into agricultural land, not to encroach into the forest cover, but to increase more forest cover. So these are important milestones that you have just set for us to work on to ensure that we as a community, as a government, we provide those goods and services to the people, because that is the contract, the social contract the government of the Gambia has signed with the people of the Gambia by voting us into power. So with that, we have to work together and ensure that together with our development partners, but we as Gambians, we must take the lead in the drive to food self-sufficiency, to environmental integrity, and also development in general. On that note, once again, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for your kind attention and to assure you that this is just the beginning of the discussion, and we will have more discussion, but more implementation of what is discussed here. And I can assure you of my ministry, collaboration and support, and the support of the government of the Gambia under the leadership of His Excellency, President Adam Barrow. I thank you all for your kind attention.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you also very much. We have some publications here from ICRAF, that's the baseline study. Okay, and also for our RCs, it would be nice if you guys come forward. When we say RCs, those are the regional coordinators. They are the ones that are really representing the project at regional level. You want to come up? We want to make sure that we have good representation, so we have 2 RCs in URR, 1 in the north, 1 in the south, 2 in CRR, 1 in the north, 1 in the south, and 1 in LRR, 5th one.
Thank you so much. This is my last appearance on this podium for today, but there is one thing which I was forced to do by myself. The book that you see, which is given to the Honorable Minister and the panelists, is a baseline study of this project. It's a very rich document that we have spent a lot of time on it. And that book happened just because of these people that you see here, the regional coordinators who really facilitated a lot of the work for the data collection and so on. And we really would like all of us to really appreciate these guys for the very good job that they have done. And from our side, we usually produce documents, but there is one very important document which we really want everyone to know about. That is this idea of moving from tree planting to tree growing. We need to stop talking about planting only, but we need to emphasize the growing part. Growing is a process. It takes time. And we need a clear accountability structure for every single tree that is planted. And it's just based on the work that we have done in the Gambia. So we want them to get one copies as just a simple appreciation for the hard work that they have been doing on the field. Last very few points. If we can get 3 institutions, universities, we really want to appreciate the young guys who are sitting with us, spending a lot of time. You are the future. So I want one person from each institution to come forward voluntarily. University of the Gambia, Kafuta, and all of these different institutions. Please. Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, there is a signature sheet that is being passed around. If you kindly just sign it and then pass it around, that's just as representing the show of hands for the resolution. And I would say thank you also very much for taking this much time. And of course, for those who want to run out as quickly as they can, please, you are free.
Well, thank you.
By the way, there is lunch, apparently. So don't run out so quickly. There is a mosque here too, I believe, right? Yeah, there is a mosque, not next to Senegambia here. Senegambia Mosque? Okay, there is a mosque. You can feel free to hang around, let's pray, and then come back and eat. Okay? Good. And also, of course, for those who have been traveling, coming back and forth, we need to do some transport reimbursement. So the accounts person is not yet here, so we want to, it's all timed so that we can do it right around lunchtime. So please, feel free.